Hello, hello, and welcome to the Say Yes Movement podcast with Heather and John. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Heather. How are you today?
I am amazing, John. I had a good weekend. Lots of good stuff came up. Yes. So, how was your weekend? You had an amazing thing that I want to ask you about how it went because you were in a Toastmasters competition on Friday. So, how did it
I
go?
was, I was, I was. It was a great competition. Unfortunately, I did not place, which is, oh, I'm totally okay with not placing because there were so many amazing speakers and so many amazing speeches. But the one thing so I put the post out on LinkedIn, I put the post out on Facebook, just letting people know, hey, this is what's showed up. And so I just want to take a second and say thank you to all of those that have showed up, right? So we had some of our regulars from this program jump into the contest and they were there wishing me well. It was just amazing to see how the community continues to show up, and you and we both
Mm.
talk about the power of community. And on a Friday night, who wants to spend their Friday night on, watching a Zoom call, watching people compete and their speeches and evaluations? It was just great to see a lot of familiar faces on the screen and just to be a part of that. And the lady who won, Amparo, she took first place and she deserved it. She definitely deserved it. She talked about how a pet rat taught her about diversity, equity, and just having a different lens on the world, right? And
What?
I would have,
What a
I
crazy
know, I
topic.
know. I I was like, what? Like when we think of rats, we don't think of them positively. At least I don't, because I've seen them in a lot of movies, and they don't do good things, right? Unless it's
Yeah.
Ratatouille, and that's different. But it was just interesting to see how she took a really simple story of a pet rat and how she was able to turn it into a lesson in terms of how we look at the world and how we look at each other. And it
I,
was just so beautifully done. It was just like the imagery, she brought you in, she made you feel it, like you could experience the whole thing. So Amparo, if you're listening to this, you like amazing, amazing, and I wish you the best at the next round, which is the district level, which is pretty much southwestern Ontario. A big chunk of southwestern Ontario is included in that. So she's going to be competing for the top title, and I'm so excited for her. It was
oh my
just so
God.
amazing to see that.
You know what I love about that story, and we say this to all of our clients, John. Each one of us has our unique lives and our unique lens and our unique stories. And that story will help someone else. So don't shy away from my story isn't good enough, my life isn't exciting enough, my this, my that. Those are all limiting beliefs. They're not true. And here's a winner for a Toastmasters talking about a pet rat. And I same with you, John. I don't get inspired by a rat, but I think, after listening to you talk about this speech and possibly going and watching it, I think I would have a different view on it. And especially when it's around diversity, it's, those life lessons are everywhere. They're everywhere. In
Yeah.
fact, what's crazy is, since we've been started the podcast, I see people saying yes everywhere. And it's so exciting because my lens has been changed, has been shifted. I see it on TV, I see it in shows that I do. I see people
Mm.
getting in their own way. And you talked, just before this call started, you talked about a movie that you watched that I haven't even heard about, but now it's on the list. So tell us where, because it's showing up for you too, the same way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Saying yes is showing up everywhere, and it's interesting because your RAS, your reticular activating system, is going to look for what you want to find, and yes is a big part of it. So this I was before we got onto this call, the one thing I shared with you is I got a little bit nostalgic, and I went onto the Disney Channel, and I'm like, oh yeah, let's see what's here. I don't know about you, but growing up as a kid, one of the things that was a custom in my home, right? I would sit down with my mom, my brother, and we, turn it to CBC, and Disney would be on, right? Like at 6 or 7 p.m. That's when I knew, oh man, tomorrow I got to get back to school, right? Like it was just the start of the week or the end of the week, depending on how you want
It
to look
was
at it.
bedtime right after Disney for us. So that was
Yeah, and I remember that like shooting star that would go over the Disney castle, like so it was just purely nostalgic for me. So the movie I ended up watching was Chang Can Dunk, and it's about this kid who, not necessarily the most popular kid in school, gets made fun of a lot, and what was interesting, he wanted to, it's one of those typical stories where he's like he wants to impress the girl, he wants to beat the guy, and he sets a bet with somebody where he says, I can dunk, right? He's 5'8", and I'm like, ooh, that's like my height, right? Like, can I imagine dunking? And so I right away I'm like, okay, the guy's 5'8", I'm 5'8", I'm like, yeah, to the story. Boom, right into it. And what was really interesting is this journey, right? Like the goal. We talk about the goal and not knowing the how, and what was really evident in this story in this movie was he had no clue on what the how. He just had no idea. Like he's like, I want to dunk. I want to watch some YouTube videos. I want to figure it out. But what's beautiful is when your desire is strong enough to achieve whatever it is you want, the how shows up for you. And he ends up meeting this coach who takes him through this process that really gets him ready and prepared, creates this blog. It's a very modern version of what's happening in today's world, where he's got this YouTube channel with his journey and how he's going through the dunking process and what he's doing and all the work that he's putting in. And what was neat was, he finally gets to that day where he's got to do this dunk off, and he dunks. He finally dunks, right? But what you don't realize is that he cheats to dunk. Ooh,
Okay.
I know. I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. And then he gets caught in the lie, and he gets caught in the cheat. And what was interesting is it provided a really good perspective on what happens when you face the consequences of that. And I think around a lot of what happens today is like, yeah, you can cheat, right? Like it was funny because I was in the pool swimming this weekend, and I was thinking about this triathlon that I did last July in Niagara, where on the surface the guy was pretending to swim and everything, but the water was shallow enough that you could walk through it. So he was walking underneath, and he was like pretending to swim on the top, right? Like, dude, you're cheating. Like, there's no rules around this, right? Like, it wasn't like for a grand prize or anything, but you're cheating, and the only person you ever cheat is yourself, right? And then there's consequences to that cheat, right? So what was really neat about the movie is I was watching this guy Chang go through this process. It was about the journey and what you pick up along the way. It's really never about the goal, right? And it's something you and we talk about quite a bit. It's never really about the goal. It's who you become in the process.
It's
right?
who
And
you
who
become in the process. Yes.
Yeah. And who you step into, right? So, I think about us and our journey in terms of what we've done and where we are today and where if we look at ourselves from last year, if you look at Heather and John of 2022 and Heather and John of 2023, I think personally we're upgrades, right? Like we're whole new versions of ourselves.
We have definitely done an upgrade. We've rebooted the whole system and started, decided to put ourselves first. And it shows there's a physical transformation that we've both gone through, but also our confidence has come up, our energy has come up. There's just all kinds of things that have gone. But I'll tell you, John, I'll just be honest about, that isn't, a one and done. And now I just have everything so hunky dory. And my husband had last week off on vacation, so I took some extra time off as well. And it was really easy to not do my regular routine. It slipped away, sleeping in a couple days, not doing my meditation, not doing my push-ups, not doing my planks, and eating out, and it just happened. And I mean, we coach this stuff, and I have to recommit and restart. And I just want to be honest about that, because even through the process of transformation, you can easily go backwards. And I think you're in a similar spot because of this sinus infection that you've been dealing with for the last few weeks. It's anything can sort of trip us up, and we got to be ready for it and understand our why. Why did we say yes to our future self to be a better version than we are today? It's not because we're great where we are, but we know that there's always more we can do. There's always that next goal that we can go after. So I'm going to say it out loud. I've recommitted, and I'm recommitted to myself. So I'm saying yes to myself this week, John, and that means, so tracking my habits and tracking my food and all the things that I know work for me. It's a formula that works for me.
Yeah, no, I love that, because I too have to recommit, right? So the last 3 weeks have been, I think I've shared it here, just kind of dealing with some health stuff. And, yesterday for the first time, I got back into the pool after almost 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And given that I've got a big event just around the corner, it was like, oh my gosh. So, a bunch of things creep in. And like, I don't know about you, but I started to feel like, is it worth it? Right? Like, should I just like give up? Right? Like, it's so easy to
Mm,
do that, right? And what I realized, you just got to keep going, right? Like, and this is what I love about today. This is what I love about today's conversation. It's really around just recommitting to ourselves that we're going to keep moving forward, recommitting to the fact that we're going to say yes to what we said yes to before, but recommit to the yes so we can keep saying yes to the big things. Because I think about, this character Chang in the movie and how he said yes to like something that was unimaginable. And the line that came up, and I want to share this with everybody, the line that came up in the movie that I just love, it's going to become one of my new favorite lines, is every obstacle is a new opportunity. And I believe it's
mm,
quoted by Kobe Bryant. And, every time you face that challenge, you face that obstacle, you face that thing that scares you, when you say yes to that, you're creating new opportunities for yourself. Right. And if the
mm-hmm.
great Kobe Bryant, like you think about him in terms of his story, I know he's no longer with us, but, the inspiration and the impact that he left on the world, like we're still talking about him today, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just that recommitment, and I think about Kobe Bryant himself. He recommitted to his craft. He recommitted to his excellence every single day. I think the first thing he did every morning, or at least from what I can remember of the stories I read about him, he would throw 1,000 free throws every single day. 1,000 free throws before his practices, before he got on the court with his team, before he did anything. 1,000 free throws a day. Now, talk about just recommitting, right? Like, and
Every
he would
day.
do it in his off season, on season, like he would just do it all the time. That's what made him the best at what he was doing, right? So today, maybe today's that day for you, right? Maybe today's that day where, it's March, it's mid March. I don't know about you, but, a lot of people, at least from what I know, like New Year's resolutions, goals for 2023, statistically, 90% of people have already given up.
They've given up. Exactly.
They
So
don't like they don't even know what they are anymore, right? Like what?
well, I want to go back to something you said there, John. You said, you kind of felt like, is it worth it? And should I move on? And, that mindset is coming from a place where you're not on purpose. You're not doing the actions that you committed to. And no matter what the reasons are, that just take those away for a sec. So you can't make a good decision about your future when you're in that mindset. So, think about the mindset that you're in, and when you're like overwhelmed or full of anxiety, or thinking of things that are causing you stress, that's not the time to say, okay, I'm not going to do this. That's the time you don't make any decisions in that way. In fact, what you do is you make the decision to just do one thing, to just take one baby step towards your goal. Get off the couch, go out, put your jacket on, go for a walk. You're not trying to run a marathon, you're just trying to do one thing. And I'll tell you, movement, guaranteed this. If you get moving and then start thinking about the problems that you're trying to solve, the solutions will come to you. Body and movement together have amazing attributes. But the anxiety, the stress, the seeing it in your mind's eye, it's like right in the front of your brain, and you're like, oh, this feels so heavy. And I know, John, we've got some processes that we work with our clients to change how they're seeing or perceiving it. And we're always reminding ourselves of these amazing mind hacks that we can do when we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling anxiety. So why don't you walk us through one of those,
Yeah.
because I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, thank you, Heather. Yeah, no, so yes, a quick little tool, and actually it was a great reminder. I was going through some of my material this weekend. It's a great tool just to reduce anxiety, stress if you're feeling it right now. So for those of you that are listening, or for those of you that are watching the replay, very simple. Just think about the picture of when we think of pictures, and I think our mind works in pictures. And the one thing I've learned through all the work that I've done is we think in pictures, and it's just easier to visualize things. So think about that stressful moment, that, intense, anxious moment where you're just feeling like really stressed out and starting to feel burnout. So here's what I'm going to invite you to do. Just pull that picture away from you and just make it black and white. And as you pull it further away from you, make it more like just make it black and white. And then if there's a sound to it, reduce the sound. Turn it down, almost like a knob on the radio. Turn it down to a point where you can't hear anything, and just bring that picture so far out of view that you no longer see it. And what you should start to feel is that pressure, that anxiety starts to go away. Just because you've taken that picture, you've reduced it, made it black and white, reduced the sounds, any sort of feelings attached to it just drift away. And it's that simple, right? Like it really is that simple. And I know for myself, I started thinking about, what's been tense and what's been stressful for me in terms of what's been showing up from my health perspective. And I just painted that picture for myself,
Mm.
right? I turned that picture black and white. I turned off the sound and I pulled it out of view so I can no longer see it. Because what no longer is in view is no longer present. Now,
Uh-huh.
the opposite is also true if you want to bring an exciting feeling, a moment, a thrill, that moment of just, being over the moon. You take that picture, bring it closer to you, make it color, make it loud, and you can hear the
Mm.
sounds, right? Like now you're like, ooh, now I'm in the party. It's almost like jumping into a movie, like a scene of a movie where you're now the participant, and you can start to feel that through your body. It's like, oh yeah, you know what? So I ended up doing that with, imagining crossing the finish line of this Ironman in May. Right? I
Mm-hmm.
heard the sounds of, the people who's yelling and screaming. If you've ever been to any of these events, people yelling and screaming in the background, crossing the finish line, seeing everything in vivid colors, and really experiencing it in my body, and really me being the participant, the player in that movie. And it was just like,
It's
it
so
was almost like
amazing.
sinking in and reconnecting with it. Yeah, sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
and because your brain doesn't know the difference, right?
It doesn't
It's
know
a,
the
it's a
difference.
massive brain hack that we don't even know we can activate it anytime because your brain's like, oh, I've won that race before. And it's always looking for patterns. So now, because you've already run that race, because you've already crossed the finish line, your brain is looking for clues on, oh, I can do this again because it thinks it's doing it again. And we coach people all the time, especially, I've coached quite a few runners where they're doing their first marathon. And, I always ask them, when you think about the marathon, what are you thinking of? And they're like, not making it, dying, falling over. Like they're never thinking of the finish line. Like that's the missing ingredient. So just forget all the other stuff that could go wrong, because it may, but it's most likely not to, because you're preparing, and go right to the end game. So when you even visualize your goals, or what you're going to do, not how you're going to get there, but what you're going to do, visualize why you're doing it for the end,
Mm.
and then the how shows up, and you just take it step by step. So this is not like we're actually giving you true mind hacks that we use with our clients, that we use for ourselves. When me and John are sort of standing in our own messy lives, we'll tell each other, all right, it's time to stand up and step into your future self. And what does that future self, what does the eyes look like and the world look like when you see it through this visual? And I'll tell you, it changes your whole outlook. It changes what you can accomplish. Like, look at my energy's amping up just thinking
Yeah.
about it. That's how quickly it can amp yourself up. So this is a really important thing, especially as for me and John, we're in a recommit week. It is a time to get back to the basics, back to what we committed to, not forget about our why, and take those baby steps again. So we're inviting all of you. What are you recommitting to? And you can tell us in the comments. You can reach out to us separately. We can help you with that. We can help you recommit.
Yeah. No, I love that you said this is recommit week, right? It's
Mm.
almost like a reset week in terms of how do we get ourselves there. And what we'll do throughout this week, just like we did today, we'll share a tool on how to get yourself recommitted. And it's funny because that picture that I painted of myself in, at the, crossing, and I say crossing because you definitely want to be on the other side of the finish line, right? um, but just recommitting to that, and having that visual, because we know the power of visualization. There's a variety of different books out there that are targeted towards this particular topic, but when you recommit with the visualization, that's what anchors it in. And we'll
Mm-hmm.
talk about anchoring on Wednesday, because like that's a whole other powerful tool. Like, blow me away. But yes, I can't believe we're already at time.
I know.
So it's Monday. So here are the actions. And Heather, I'm just going to repeat what you said. What are you recommitting to this week? What have you kind of fallen off? You know, it happens, whether it's health, whatever, life shows up, people on vacations, people eating cookies in front of you. What are you going to recommit to this week? And let's make sure we get back on track, because we're here to support you. And as we go through the week, we're going to share some tools with you. They're going to help you get there, help you recommit to your best version of yourself. So very excited about this week. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, man, I'm like, I don't know about you, I'm already feeling jacked up and pumped up for this week. So, woo-hoo.
Yes.
All right. So remember, when you shift your mindset, you shift your life. And with that, we are out. We'll be back on Wednesday, everybody. Have an amazing Monday, and drop in the chat, drop in the comments what you're recommitting to, or message us directly and let us know. We'd love to know. All right, everybody. Have a great one. Take care.